I don't know about you, but I often wonder how some of these projects are giving away such a high rate of return to its user base. I mean, StepN, for example, is giving away $200, $300, $400, $500 a day in some cases to users just to walk around the block. Now that's a crazy APY I've never even heard of just for walking, right? Is this a Ponzi scheme? Is this a scam? How is this economically viable? Well, that's what this video is going to be covering. And I don't mean to drop a bunch of FUD out there, but I am going to be looking at the good, the bad, the ugly. But I'll also be looking at some of the good notes and some of the positive sides that this project can do to potentially avoid economic collapse. Long term, it's not economically viable in its current state. But again, not dropping FUD here. We're going to talk about what they can do to mitigate any of that economic collapse into the future here. Without further ado, let's go look at the heart of the economy of StepN by looking at the tokenomics. So at the heart of the tokenomics of StepN is a dual token economy. Now, notably, this is not something that is unique to StepN, and it's actually used by a number of projects out in the crypto space, most notably and popularized by Axie Infinity, which appears to have been the pioneer in the space when it comes to dual token economies. And we will talk about the relationship here in a second. But one thing I want to note about the crypto space in general that we need to keep an open mind about the entire situation is that there's a lot of experimentation when it comes to tokenomics in general and just general economic models for a lot of these projects, something that time hasn't really been on our side for. And we can see the effect that it can have drastic, devastating effects for people such as Terra Luna, which was playing around with algorithmically backed stablecoins, which obviously completely failed. We saw how that went. So we can see that there is a lot of risk and potential behind this, but what I would also say is that time is on our side in that there is still time to potentially work out some of these kinks and hopefully follow through with them. The other benefit here is that I would say out of all the tokenomic project models like this, Axie is far at front when it comes to size and scope and how far along in their project building they actually are. So any major hiccups, they're going to come up to first. And that is something that we can actually see, and we're gonna point to an article here in a second. But let's talk about the tokens behind StepN and how they actually lead us to what we're talking about. So we have GST and GMT. GMT is the major DAO token, which is essentially like owning shares in the company of StepN itself. You'll have some governance rights and you'll be able to stake GMT to earn rewards in the future. Currently, there's a total supply of 6 billion. We can see that right there, nicely printed, and that's a capped supply, which means that there's a finite amount. Theoretically, if demand stays the same, that price should stay the same or maybe go up if demand goes up. That's the beauty of having a capped supply. GST is where the real issue comes in with any of these tokenomic models. Unlimited supply for its utility and reward token is a real problem. Now, GST currently is the only token you can earn in-game. However, I would note that GMT eventually will be able to be earned in-game at higher levels. So the way they are setting it up is that GMT will be incorporated into the game eventually. It isn't yet. So this is part of what I wanted to talk about, where we're seeing experimentation, we're seeing knobs being played with, we're seeing strings being pulled to find that equilibrium for where this will ultimately be a winning combination for hopefully the users and the platform itself. But at unlimited supply, that's a real issue because that leads to inflation. Because if any monetary instrument can continue to be inflated indefinitely without anything putting it in check, it will create inflation that will cause its value to drop to zero. Look at like a Zimbabwe dollar with hyperinflation, or even the Terra Luna collapse. That's essentially what happens. When so many of them are created, it's so easy for if the demand hasn't changed, it's so easy for anyone who's looking for that token or that instrument to be able to go get it, that they no longer have to fight for the price. Then the price goes down. It's much easier and it's cheaper. So what can they do to mitigate this? Well, right off the bat, when it comes to crypto in general, we have our mechanisms called burning. Now, unlike fiat, which it's generally illegal to burn your money or rip it or destroy it, in tokenomics of crypto, it's actually okay to burn your tokens if it's built into the mechanism of the code. And as it goes, GST actually has a burning mechanism, so does GMT in case of in-game play. Here is a list of the entire burning section that we have up at this point. Notably, this is subject to change in the future. The one thing I would really point to is that there are a few mandatory places that you have to burn in order to continue playing the game. And leveling up your sneakers, to my understanding, is almost a necessity in order to maintain earning an appropriate amount of GST to offset the ROI to get into the platform. So you're also gonna have to repair your shoes in order to maintain your GST increment balances, because in order to get into the game, you have to spend a certain amount of money to buy the NFTs. Currently on the Sol platform, I believe it's like anywhere between 8 to 11 Sol, which is currently anywhere from $400 to $600 in that range to actually purchase one of these NFT sneakers. And for anything outside of that, which would be in BNB, I believe it's getting to some crazy numbers, even higher than that. So there is a necessity to actually get some of that money back. Otherwise, people wouldn't spend this. I mean, that's a lot of money to spend on a game you want to play. This is a good point to actually talk about playing games that people want to pay money to play games they actually like, but the reality is they really need to be having fun or be addicted to the game or be part of a community that is going to incentivize them to buy that skin or purchase any in-game assets that they don't really, maybe they own later on, but they don't have any value other than they're purchasing to play this game. We're talking about a game that makes you go out and run. It's kind of painful for some people, and a lot of people don't want to do it. So I know I digress there, but I figured I should talk about all those features. But let's turn back to the burning mechanism and the fact that there is actually a mandatory set aside for GST. So this bodes well. Burning mechanisms are the equilibrium that hopefully will keep inflation at bay, because otherwise inflation, even if it is at a constant rate with adoption, it can still be at 10, 20% and could be something that could deflate the value of that token again into nauseam. It could be worth nothing by the end of it. I also want to note here that you can see GMT is also burnable in game. So this means that it's technically a deflationary token, which means its value, if demand stays the same, will theoretically also go up. So GMT could be the real winner out of this situation. We have to remember that both GMT and GST eventually will be in-game assets that you can win as reward, as incentive to play this game. Now, as I had hinted to a second ago, the burning minting mechanism is really the equilibrium that kind of keeps that inflation at check and is a tool that development teams put in place to kind of balance it out so that it makes sense over time. Well, I'm gonna get to the chase with this project, and when it comes to this kind of tokenomic model, eventually it becomes unsustainable. And at the beginning, it's quite often used in almost a Ponzi economic way, where essentially it's incentive to get a user base developed so they can work on the project, maintain a little bit of income through transaction fees, and it allows them to further develop the platform before they switch that mechanism over. And we can see that this is actually true through Axie Infinity. This is actually something that has plagued a lot of other platforms and actually Axie Infinity itself. We can see this article here. Axie Infinity token AXS, which is the equivalent to GMT, the governance token, gains 40% after taking steps to avoid permanent economic collapse. The leading NFT game announced an update that would effectively slash the creation of its native Smooth Love Potion tokens by 56%. Smooth Love Potions, or SLP, is the utility token or the in-game reward as of previously for Axie Infinity, which is the equivalent of StepN's GST. It also had an unlimited supply and theoretically hyperinflation to forever, and this is why we're seeing some actions being taken by Axie Infinity. I would also note that I have been through a number of the communities in Discord and actually talked to their members who have seen concern related to the inflationary nature of their reward token. They are all waiting for more of their governance token to be incorporated. Axie also was one of those platforms that mentioned that eventually AXS would be the main token of reward. So we again have to see that this is sort of a stepping stone for these platforms. In their current state, they cannot survive. It's just the way inflation works and the way unlimited supply works is it just isn't economically viable. Not to mention, we really have to talk a little bit in a second about revenue generation, because money going out has to come in at an increased amount in order to make it even worthwhile. Otherwise, what's the point? So really quickly, this paragraph states it out very well. In detail, the play to earn startup expanded its number of leaderboard slots, essentially expanding the amount of people who could earn rewards to 300,000, and boosted the amount of AXS rewards to 117,676 from the earlier 3,000 for the next season. So they basically significantly increased from what I would say is almost zero, the equivalent of StepN's GMT right now. 3,000 is nothing compared to 117,000, as being the new reward that they're going to be pushing in-game for the seasons within the gameplay. Axie Infinity also eliminated the daily quest and the adventure mode, meaning gamers would now earn SLP tokens only through area combat. The decision expects to reduce the SLP token token daily supply by 50%. This is basically Axie realizing that the model as it stood right then was not sustainable. And I would point to the fact that I think they knew this the entire time. They really used this as a potential loss leader, put some money into it, get a customer base while we not only work out the tokenomics, but we also develop the platform further and can then eventually lead into changing the reward over to our governance DAO token, which would be the real economic incentive, maybe put a deflationary mechanism on that incentive, whether it be AXS or GMT, and allow it to be the reward token of future. We can very quickly see how this makes sense right away. So a happy customer is going to be someone who gets rewards. There is going to be some sort of in-game expenditure, which would be the burn, and therefore they're given profit or incentive. The happy user makes 10 tokens, only spends 5 tokens, and is given 5 tokens at the end of it. That's a play to earn sort of model. The sad user is someone who has to only get a reward of 5 tokens, but spend 10 tokens in order to keep playing that game to make sense. And that means therefore they have to pull out of their pocket to play the game. That's a pay to play. That said, we can expand this model and we can say, but plus GMT as a reward in the future, and GMT's price is going up, then that might change this person, that frown upside down. I alluded to it in that last drawing, but I think that GMT, or the governance token, is going to be the main savior for the entire tokenomics style that both Axie, a number of these projects, and StepN actually use. The governance token will be slightly deflationary because you will still need to burn it in game and it will be part of the rewards, but it will be bringing that price up as it is deflationary being reacted. As demand increases for it, it will also theoretically increase the price due to supply and demand structure. GST, however, I imagine long-term ending up being some form of a in-game expenditure that you have to have regardless in that economic incentive to get reward for GMT. Now, whether or not I see a future where unlimited players are unlimitedly making money, I do not necessarily see, because I imagine that everyone will have to get their rewards in the form of that GMT token. In order to see how GMT affects the entire payout system and StepN in general making money, we need to also talk about the traditional gaming model and how the revenue generation model works there. So over on the left-hand side, you can see our happy user who's looking to find a couple of different types of games to play. In one hand, he decides to go over and throw his money into the new Diablo 18 game, which he's been looking forward to. It's going to be a banger. And all of that money, as we know, ends up being funneled straight into the developer. Anyone who built the game ends up with all of the money. On the outside of the game, the user is left with just fun. And if anything, he's left with negative dollars, right? He has negative amount of money because he did have to put some money in because all this money went over to the company that made the game. Now, in the other opposite version, where it would be a play-to-earn game, we have StepN. So they decided to play StepN, they put money in, they are generating some money through that user. They then decide to distribute it to GMT, that all that money comes through to GMT. The user ends up getting a slice of it, as well as the dev team, as well as any other holders of GMT. So you end up in part becoming an owner of the company, therefore getting some of your money back. Now, do you get all of your money back? No, you do not, because the only way that this person can come out a success more than he is being paid for it is by being one of the few percentage of winners who actually comes out ahead. Not everyone can win a surplus out of a game long term. Essentially distributing all the rewards out to players, where does the money come from? This is the entire sort of Ponzi problem that a lot of people have with these platforms, is that where is the money end up coming from that's going to allow everybody who plays it to earn a surplus? Now, when it comes to this ecosystem, we know you have to buy in sneakers and you have to purchase NFTs to get into that space. Eventually, that trade ends up happening as an economy between individuals. After the first 10,000 sneakers were sold, StepN actually doesn't sell any more sneakers. That entire economy is a secondary market out there for the people. So that money is being traded and expended between people. StepN itself actually only generates its money through a number of other places, and that would be in-game transactions on its NFT marketplace, which is where you have to do your purchases of it. It also would make a certain percentage of, I believe, some burning mechanisms related to the in-game playing. So there is a revenue generation place for StepN. However, is that going to exceed the amount of money that those people need to get back in order to pay for their shoes to get into the ecosystem? You see the problem? Now, as it says, the team's profit is noted in their white paper. The marketplace trading fees and royalty fees are reserved to the team to sustain its operation, but no less than 5% of the team's profit will be given back to the StepN ecosystem. So they'll be taking that and throwing it back into the treasury reserve to be distributed out in that GMT. But I think we can all agree that all that money that was being brought in before, that can't all just go back out. So this is where we have a little bit of a problem. Where else can revenue come from? And something I would point to about this would be related to potentially staking rewards as far as them on liquidity pools. So as far as them holding a vast majority of the tokens on a lot of the trading and liquidity platforms, this could be another major revenue platform for them. But honestly, when we think about it, there isn't much else outside of the small in-game fees they're going to be making. Now, again, I don't want to drop FUD in this video, but I do have to point to the fact that I don't know what that amount is, but it does seem unlogical that it would make sense that more money could leave than came in. So there's gonna be someone shortchanged at the end of it. There's gonna be people who play into the game and don't win money at the end of it. And that's, I think, just the stark reality of it. They're not gonna be play to earn for everybody. It's a play with potential to earn. I think the benefit of playing a play to earn and living in an ecosystem on the crypto space for gaming is down to the ownership rights, period, with a potential to possibly make some money down the road. There is risk in anything like life, and you need to be aware of that before you get into anything that seems like it's too good to be true, because honestly, it probably is too good to be true. Something else I thought I should point to while I'm here about revenue generation is the marketplace though. So we do have a number of other potential revenue generating models that are coming down. This is something I need to make sure to mention, is that we are early on in the project, and this is why I brought this up at the very beginning. The platforms need time to figure these things out. Unfortunately, we're the guinea pigs in it. There is incentive to be the guinea pigs, and this is the way you need to look at it. If you're making $200, $300, $400, $500 a day, what do you care? But the day those diminish, you may start to not have the incentive to come in, and it is their job as the developers to figure that out in the background. It's not our job. Our job is to play the game, give our feedback, and potentially make some money because we're so early in. This is the incentive given to us. That's why these rate of returns are so great. And this is realistically why the vast majority of them are Ponzi schemes right now, because they're taking their money that they get from any generation of income, whether they're VCs, whether they're people buying NFTs, whether they're from IDO events, and they are giving them back to their users in order to get adoption and build a platform. I am not using this as a complete negative, but it's just the reality of the situation. You need to take it in and understand it before you get in and get upset if something bad happens. Remember, you're a guinea pig, you're early on in, and they're trying to reward you handsomely for that privilege. So this is also the point where I would kind of point to the fact that I'm probably going to be trying StepN myself just for fun, for the memes, right? And I figured, hey, why not let some YouTube guy go out there and try and risk his assets instead of you? Stay tuned on this channel. This is the point where if you got any value out of this, you learned something, or it's just educational, you like and subscribe, but stay tuned because this is where I will be also posting my journey as I start to go through the StepN ecosystem and see how much money you can actually realistically make money, and if it still makes enough money today to warrant the $400 NFT purchase. Don't forget, guys, to also leave your comments down below. I think this is the perfect platform to really talk about how you feel about it. So leave your comments down below. I would like to know if you're in StepN. Do you feel like it's gonna make it? Are you bullish? Are you bearish? Do you think I missed some stuff? Let me know in the comments down below. That's the real key out there, is communicating so we can learn together and see if we can come out the other side, because WAGMI, we're all in this together. All right, guys, remember, none of this is financial advice. It's just an opinion, and I'll see you in the next video.